So, we've got a couple of strange things here. This one's obviously not anime. It's just another, non-anime pickup. But I guess this one may be more relevant. It's Pacific Rim, obviously. The, recent mecha movie. And then here we have the one DVD that arrived this week. Or today, rather. Today was a rather slim pickings sort of day. But here we go. We got a Royal Space Force, The Wings of Honneamise on Blu-ray, and Princess Knight Part 2. This one obviously hasn't been opened yet, so why don't we peel back the plastic and take a peek. It was also re-released on DVD, but I already have the old copy of it on DVD, and maybe quality's better, maybe not, I don't know, but I have it now. And then for Princess Knight Part 2, pretty not so notable insides. Although it looks like the Right Stuff thing finally switched to, I can't remember the name. Hiyako, was it? I don't remember. No, that's not everything, but, Well, next up we have the, Little Witch Academia Blu-ray, which, finally released. In the back here we have this special booklet, which I suspect is probably translations for the main booklet thing here. Beneath that we have the case that holds the discs. It's just a Blu-ray here and the CD soundtrack here. Fairly straightforward. This book is probably the most notable thing, if only because the artwork is nice. It's so very nice on it. First of all, this, which is wrapped on the inside cover, says, "Never forget, a believing heart is your magic," which is of course related to the content of the show itself. And then for this booklet we have a really big picture. The only problem is, since it's the sleeve of the book itself, you can't really show it all without potentially damaging the book. Something I don't really want to do, but it's really nice. I have to pair these together, so I think I've got comic book protectors, but they're not big enough for this sort of stuff. I ordered a biggest size I could find on brief notice. We'll have to see how those work. For now, it's kind of your standard book. Not exactly like the NIS stuff. Closer to the stuff that was in the Gurren Lagann book. So there's a lot of character design stuff, and there's plenty of Japanese text in here like this, which is why I think that the other book is probably this is probably the translations for it. Now we want to make sure that this goes back on. Ooh, it says official booklet at the bottom of this booklet, just down here. That's how you know it's official. Or rather, I know it's official because I ordered the copy. Now, this was sold on Trigger's site. I know there's been some people out there who are kind of confused about the Little Witch Academia 2 Kickstarter. And I think some people on certain tiers may be getting this as well. I don't know the exact details of that, because the tier I aim for involves I don't know, a lot of stuff. Probably earlier access than some of the others. So, while this is almost all the anime stuff, there is one other thing, and bringing Kickstarter up is actually highly appropriate, because, well, there's nothing special about this. This is, "Are you enjoying the time of Eve?" which may be relevant to the time of Eve anime itself. And then we've got Evelyn a new coffee for the time of Eve, which is for holding coffee. As you can see, it's empty, but these came from the Kickstarter for the U.S. release of the Time of Eve movie, and obviously the OVA series already has an English subtitles and can be imported, and I believe they're both the same story. One is just an OVA version of the story, and the other is just the movie version of the story. But there we go. That's this week's update. A bit small, I admit, but still pretty good in my opinion because, well, I really liked getting this cover. Fortunately, I will hopefully not have too much to talk about in terms of stuff I've watched, because I think I only really watched one thing, and that was Kokoro Connect. And this is the TV series and doesn't include the OVA. Not for any reason other than the OVA just hasn't come out on DVD yet here. DVD and Blu-ray. I do believe it's scheduled to have a release in December. Gives us a 2-month wait. I think Japanese and people who downloaded got a 3-month wait between them. It's not too bad for us. Content-wise, well, I wanted to go into Kokoro Connect, not really know what the story was supposed to be about. And I think that's actually a pretty pleasant thing, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, about the premise of the series. It's actually pretty good. If you do read it and you have a pretty good idea, it's the sort of thing you're more often going to see show up in either perverted anime stuff or cheesy live-action movies, I guess. But Kokoro Connect is able to pull it off pretty well, and I think a lot of the reason for that is TV series format allows for better pacing, and at the same time being completely focused on it and not being anti allows it to. Just kind of explores some interesting aspects in terms of character development, and that's really what makes Kokoro Connect kind of nice, is this character development that happens in it. And I don't mean that from like the characters change a lot. They really don't change all that much. They just sort of change for the better in terms of being more in a state of all's right with the world, I guess. Like, there's some of them have bigger issues than the other, but they kind of come to a better understanding of how to deal with themselves there, and they don't really change a whole lot the way they act and stuff, but whatever. And that element was actually, I thought, more enjoyable than what I would consider the downside to the anime. And this is the personal downside, of course, and not something that's going to be universal to everybody. But this is another one of those anime that thinks, oh yes, girls hitting guys. That's supposed to be funny, right? And the guys are totally, yeah, I deserve to be hit. Blah, blah, blah. It seems a bit abusive. It's just one of those things that I have to ignore. And this anime turned out to be interesting and alright without that. A couple of interesting twists that were a little tricky to predict, and I'm wondering where the 4-episode OVA is going to go. I have a pretty good idea simply because of what was unresolved. Excuse me. I've just been exhausted. Let's see. Other than that, see, that's the anime I've only really watched, because everything else has just been a mix of stuff. I've been jumping around watching random episodes of stuff, just refreshing some things. For example, Poilemente Madoka Magic. I didn't really watch any but one specific episode all the way through. I rewatched the Bully episode of Shigo Fumi because that's good. I didn't rewatch all of Little Witch Academia, but I did rewatch like half of it. Partly because I was intending to do something else yesterday night, but for some reason I didn't do that thing or anything else. I had plenty of other time. I don't know. I was sleepy then too. Over the weekend, I guess I was playing more Wind Waker than watching anime. fun playing through it again. But the anime I did watch was with my brother and his family. And I guess we just watched Sword Art Online episodes 10 through 14, which isn't all that much, but for them it's kind of a lot. I mean, they have a 7-month-old child, so for them it's probably hard to get that much of a breather time. Not that I necessarily provide a breather so much as when you have a third person helping watch a kid, sometimes it just gets easier. Especially since when they get to certain important parts, I can intentionally make sure he's definitely distracted so that they can focus on the story that's happening. It's a predictive thing that's helpful, knowing in advance what's going to happen. I guess I don't have a whole lot else to talk about other than the live action movie stuff, which of course, Gravity I'm not going to talk too much about. Kind of a stupid setup, but it didn't dwell on it too much, so unlike something like Summer Wars, which obviously grinds my gears and I bitch about every time I talk about, I thought Gravity was actually pretty good. Pacific Rim, I could, watching it, understand exactly why some of the bigger mecha people in the anime industry actually liked it, and that's kind of part of the reason I want to talk about that one just a little bit. I mean, it's not groundbreaking in the same way that Evangelion is, but I'm kind of glad for that because it remains. They set up that system where two people are piloting and they're connected and whatnot, and I was a bit afraid that it would try and get a little too deeper than it really could handle, especially in a movie format. But the good news is it didn't really misuse that concept. I thought it used it fairly well, fairly straightforward. One other nice thing I thought it did was it wasn't about building up this concept of, oh yes, here's how humanity has to start. It's kind of set up where things have already happened and mechas are just already a fact, which is a very anime thing. I mean, think about Code Geass, which begins with, oh yeah, Britain, they perfected the use of mechas and kicked everybody's fucking asses. And Pacific Rim kind of follows that same general concept, where the focus isn't supposed to be on, oh yes, see, look at these things that people develop. It's like, oh yes, look at these things that people have developed that they're actively using. And unlike something like Transformers, it's really easy to follow and enjoy the action just because on the one hand you have robots versus giant organic things, so they're visibly very easy to tell apart. You can easily always tell what happens. But they even make sure to give everything just their own unique shapes and forms so that you can kind of tell, oh yeah, this is that robot. It's not the main robot, but I recognize it as the other one that those people use. So it's very easy to visibly tell them apart. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised if the people who made this movie watched the CGI Transformer stuff and said, you know, they ball up into this mess of robot parts. You can't really tell where the arms begin and the legs for another end, and then when there's all this action and stuff, you just can't really tell as easily what's going on. You get confused, and Transformers also kind of is a bit too heavy on the people's struggles, whereas Pacific Rim kind of kept it focused on the elements that are the important elements, the major elements. One thing my brother tried to compare it to was Independence Day, and it was kind of interesting because, well, it's not the same kind of movie as Independence Day, and it doesn't bring out the same kind of emotions. Independence Day kind of has action elements, but it's almost more of a, it's everything else that What's-His-Face has done. It's a disaster survival sort of movie, but it's kind of a stupid, awesome movie, or an awesome, stupid movie or something, and that's the way this was described, and it's kind of a similar concept. In fact, there's a lot about the two, beyond being completely different stories and completely different story types, that actually are very similar between the two. It's quite interesting. And I kind of prefer the way Independence Day introduces them, but probably more because this is an action movie, and I'm not terribly an action person. I definitely enjoy action, but maybe not as much as other people because of like the Dead Alive or Ruby. That's RWY, RWBY, which I've been watching. Can't have any complaints about for that. I don't know. It's all confusing and crazy, but overall, watching Pacific Rim, I actually thought it was pretty entertaining to watch, especially from a mecha perspective. I can completely understand, and hopefully me talk about it here, I didn't spoil it in a way that's the way somebody would hopefully I didn't spoil anything anybody actually cared about, since I'm just trying to construct a this is the setup of the movie sort of thing. And if you were probably doubtful about it, maybe it gave you some good ideas on not being doubtful. Other than that, let's see, I guess this probably would have been good to double check before I started recording. But I guess I thought of mentioning the Bubblegum Crisis KickStarter, which has reached its pledge goal. I thought it would reach its pledge goal tonight. So, that's going on, the release of Bubblegum Crisis on Blu-ray. Hooray. And, I don't know if y'all would care about it as much or not, but I thought I'd at least spread the word a bit more to people who may not have heard it. So, all that aside, I can't think of anything else to particularly talk about. Anime release stuff is crazy because there's a lot of delayed stuff going on right now. I think even like, I probably mentioned interested in that Yamibo anime, which is something I've downloaded before, and whose official title is something like Book Hat Travelers, something like that. I think that one got pushed out a month, sometime into late November, so it's all confusing. Yeah, I can't think of anything in particular to talk about other than, it's crazy, but we'll have to make do. But all that aside, y'all have a happy Halloween. And I guess before anybody asks, I'm planning on rewatching Elfen Lied. I haven't seen that Elfen Lied on Blu-ray thing, so that's the plan. So yeah, y'all have a nice Halloween and a nice week.